glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 7, text number 5. Deshata kalato yosav. Deshata kalato yosav. Avasthata svato anyatha. Avasthata svato anyatha. Avilupta vabodhatma. Avilupta vabodhatma. Sayujyeta jaya katham. Sayujyeta jaya katham. Deshata kalato yosav. Avasthata svato anyatha. Avilupta vabodhatma. Sayujyeta jaya katham. To yourself, avasthata svato anyatha. Avilupta vabodhatma. Sayujyeta jaya katham. Deshata kalato yosav. Avasthata anyatha. Avilupta vabodhatma. Sayujyeta jaya katham. Please repeat word for word. Deshataha. Circumstantial. Kalataha. By the influence of time. Yaha. One who. Aso. The living entity. Avasthataha. By situation. Svataha. By dream. Anyataha. By others. Avilupta. Extinct. Avabodha. Consciousness. Atma. Pure self. Saha. He. Yujyeta. Engaged. Ajayaha. With nations. Katham. How is it so? Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. The pure soul is pure consciousness and is never out of consciousness, either due to circumstances, time, situations, dreams, or other causes. How then does he become engaged in nations? Purport. The consciousness of the living being is always present and never changes under any circumstances. As above mentioned, when a living man moves from one place to another, he is conscious that he has changed his position. He is always present in the past, present, and future, like electricity. One can remember incidents from his past and can conjecture about his future also on the basis of past experience. He never forgets his personal identity, even though he is placed in awkward circumstances. How then can the living entity become forgetful of his real identity as pure spirit soul and identify with matter unless influenced by something beyond himself? The conclusion is that the living entity is influenced by the avidya potency, as confirmed in both the Vishnu Purana and the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. The living entity is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 7.5 as Paraprakriti, and in the Vishnu Purana he is mentioned as the Parashakti. He is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord and potency, and he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord as potency and not as the potent. The potent can exhibit many potencies, but the potency cannot equal the potent at any stage. One potency may be overcome by another potency, but to the potent, all potencies are under control. The Jiva potency or the Kshetragya Shakti of the Lord has the tendency to be overpowered by the external potency, avidya karma samagya. And in this way he is placed in the awkward circumstances of material existence. The living entity cannot be forgetful of his real identity unless influenced by the avidya potency. Because the living entity is prone to the influence of avidya potency, he can never equal the supreme potent. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivashadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming for the Friday morning Bhagavatam class. So, we are on this new chapter, chapter 7, further inquiries by Vidura. So as we know, Vidura has been asking set of questions to Maitreya Muni, and Maitreya has explained about the existence, about the creation, the universal form of the Lord in the previous chapter. We hear about the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, how they originate from the head and the face, and then the body, the arms and the legs. So all this is explained nicely by Maitreya Muni. Now Vidura is asking some more realistic questions that can relate to us, because this is the first thing one may wonder, because the basics of our philosophy, Bhagavad Gita, when we teach someone in preaching, when we are preaching Bhagavad Gita to someone, the first thing we try to make them understand is the existence of consciousness, right? That there is a presence of soul inside the body. That's how Prabhupada started preaching as well. He initially, when he started first, he would tell people to come to a platform where they can understand that there is a soul, a spirit soul. Prabhupada would famously quote, like Prabhupada would say this famous line that I'm not an American, Indian, Australian, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, or black, white, I am a spirit soul. So this is the first level of understanding of self-realization, that a person is not the body, he is the soul, the person inside him. So that's the real body. And then we use Bhagavad Gita. There's a beautiful analogy Krishna is used in Bhagavad Gita as a chariot. So as we know that the body is like a chariot, and the soul is the driver of that chariot, the person inside. So it's easier to understand for a person that there is an existence of soul if you preach it in that way, because otherwise there's a lot of confusion. Right now we're living in a time in Kali Yuga where bodily sense gratification is the basics of everything. Because we're not being taught from the very beginning in school, right? We never get taught that there is a soul. There is no knowledge. There is no information. There's history, there is geography, there is science, there is physics, chemistry, there's so many mathematics, there's so many subjects, but there's no subject that teach about the existence of the soul, or that teach a person the difference between the body and the soul, which is like the most crucial understanding of life. So imagine being born in a society where you're not being told who you are, because we see in current time, everyone is worried, who am I? Everyone is thinking, where do I come from? All these big questions never been answered. So throughout our life, so that's why we see so much confusion. Some people even think, am I a boy? Am I a girl? What am I? What's going on? Some people are not even sure what's going on in the current world. So this is the problem. This is the root problem of our society, that we are not teaching the basics to the people, to kids when they're born. So, and when, for example, saying from my own example, not saying from the example of anyone else, but when I was growing up, I had this inquisitiveness to know about these greater truth of life, but because there was no answer, like my parents, Indian parents are great at that. They would not answer the question. Instead, they would cover with one another question. Don't worry about that, just focus on your studies. That's more important right now. So that's what they would say. So slowly, we can see a jiva, or a pure consciousness, a pure soul, is covered by avidya because of the influence of many different situations. Imagine you were born in a society where you were taught in the Vedic times, when you were born, everything was clear. There were great brahmanas, there were learned scholars, there were people with the knowledge. I was hearing Navina Narada Prabhu was saying that why was the first created beings were in the form of rishis, munis, sages, who had full knowledge about the absolute truth. Why was it? You mean the first created beings could have been Kshatriyas as well? No, but they were brahmanas, pure brahmanas, because they knew the purpose of their life. They knew what is the goal of the life. And with the influence, with the association of these great people, these great saintly people, one was supposed to know the course of life, right? Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that the great rishis and all this knowledge is coming from this disciplic succession, and great saintly kings understood in that way. So what was the verse? I'm trying to remember the verse. Evam parapara praptam evam rajarshayo vidu sa kalena mahata yoga nashta parantapa. So in due course of time, this disciplic succession was broken and the knowledge appeared to have lost. So we know that this knowledge is coming straight from Krishna, because as Prabhupada explains in the purport, that Krishna is the supreme potent, right? Supreme potent. So we see in today's time, everyone thinks they are potent. What does potent means? What is the definition of potent? The definition of potent means one who possesses riches, one who has all the opulences, the one who's created something. That's potent. But we falsely think that we have created. I was giving an example in my last class, how Prabhupada was speaking to these great scientists, the big time scientists, and it was actually in Melbourne. So he was speaking to these scientists, and these scientists was talking about creating it was in what? So it was 70s or 80s, so there was like the first satellite or something that was created that time, and the scientists were asking Prabhupada about the satellite. Look, they have spent so much of their knowledge to create this great satellite. And Prabhupada was saying, what's great about this satellite? There's only one satellite. Krishna has created these planets. What to speak of planets? So many universes Krishna has created. Why don't you see that greatness instead of seeing that one small satellite? And then Prabhupada would go on saying, and how many people died to launch that satellite? And how much resources was spent to develop that satellite? Instead, you could have used that in Krishna's service, educating people about the existence of the Supreme. So there's a book, Easy Journey to Other Planets, where it's such a tiny book, but Prabhupada very nicely answers all these inquisitiveness of the scientists and philosophers in that book. So it's a very beautiful book to read. I would highly recommend. So the point is that Krishna is the supreme potent. Everything is created by Krishna. Right, at the end of the day, this is the absolute truth. Krishna is the creator of everything. You can argue, you can debate, you can question that I have created something, because, we often do. We try to, like so many people, we put something together and we say, I have created. But Prabhupada used to give an example that people would say, I've created this building. How have you created this building? Krishna has provided you with all the material to create the building. You did not create any material. Just because you're putting together some things doesn't mean you have created. Instead, what we should say, I have assembled. I have assembled what Krishna has created. That's a much more right way to say. But because we are in avidya, we are covered with nations, ignorance, we often claim what we have not created. We claim the potency, the potent of the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada says that we are the potency. A jiva is a potency, not the potent. For example, you can see that there is a sun, and then there is sunlight. There is the rays of the sun. Now, when the rays, sometimes in Australia or New Zealand, the rays are sunlight is sometimes very, can hurt your skin, can damage, it's very powerful. So one does not say that, today the sunlight is very, very intense. No, we say the sun is very intense, because sun is the potent, and the rays is the potency. So everything comes from the potent. So that's what we try to understand, that Krishna is the supreme potent, and everything is coming from Krishna. We are just the potency. And Prabhupada says that one potency may be covered, one potency may be overcome by another potency, but to the potent, all potencies are under control. Now, Krishna is the potent, the supreme potent, and he's in control of everything. Even though he's not influenced by any of the potencies that he creates, but he's still in control. He never gets overcome by those potencies. So we should understand, and I have to understand it better using a mundane example, like for a magician, because in the last chapter we were hearing that Krishna is also the supreme magician. He's created everything in a very magical form. So one should if we see that even a magician, when a magician performs his magic trick, everyone is amazed in illusion, because everyone is covered in illusion by that magic trick of the magician. But a magician himself is never covered in illusion, because he knows the magic trick. He knows the magic he's performing. If a magician himself was covered by illusion, then there will be no magic trick, because then it would be all bewilderment. Because for a magician to successfully perform his art is so that he knows what's the truth and what's the false. He knows the difference between true and false. He knows what's illusion and what's real. So similarly, Krishna, even though we are covered with illusion, and we may not sometimes be able to see the truth and false, but Krishna always knows the truth, because he is the potent, not the potency. So this is a very beautiful point, and potency is a very beautiful word to understand. Potency, what does potency means? A jiva is never out of consciousness. So we're never out of consciousness. We are always conscious beings, right? Like many people who claim that animal killing is okay, they don't realize that every living entity is conscious. They can feel, they're sentient beings, they can feel everything. But due to covered with avidya and ignorance, we sometimes feel everything is in this world is for our benefit, for our use. But that is not true. We are just here to use everything that is already given to us in Krishna's service. That's the whole understanding. That's why we read this beautiful Vedic philosophy, because it tells us the highest purpose. If you go through any other religions or even any other so-called Hindu traditions, they'll give you a good understanding of maybe the difference between the soul and the body, but they'll never be able to fully explain you how you can use this body in the full service for the highest purpose of life. No one will be able to give you that understanding. Because this whole understanding comes from the idea of understanding Krishna. And no one knows about Krishna in Kali Yuga. I remember when I was distributing books in India, in Delhi, a lot of people would come and I made this line. I would tell people that everyone has heard of Krishna in India, but no one knows about Krishna in India. So, and people would be like, yeah, I know about Krishna, like what I've seen in TV or movies, but I've actually never read what is the full information on Krishna. So we can understand the pastimes of Krishna, we can read about the pastimes of Krishna, but we may not be able to understand it fully until we know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is why when we read Bhagavad Gita as it is, that is the most beautiful book ever written, because Prabhupada clearly at every single stage is mentioning Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's like big time emphasis on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because we are born in ignorance and we are covered. Gurudev said, my Guru Maharaj said that the default position of a living entity is impersonalism. So we always automatically in the impersonal mindset. That's why Prabhupada constantly mentioning Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead helps us bring it out from the nations, constant nations that we are always put in. So every time you read that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you become more attracted towards Krishna, because you're saying Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in your mind, mentally, constantly saying Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it automatically puts us in a position where we actually belong as the servant of Krishna. Because once we understand the supremacy, once we try to understand the supremacy of Krishna, we automatically put ourselves in a category where we belong as the servant of Krishna, which is our natural position. So, by the mercy of the Lord, there are many situations, the whole Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, we see there's been many situations that Krishna has put, who's the potent, he puts his devotees in a position of greatness. You know, we know Arjuna, how Arjuna was put in a great position by the Supreme Lord. He didn't even take any credit. You know, Krishna never took any credit for anything that he did for Arjuna. Similarly, we know Dhruva, or we know Prahlad. You know, Prahlad, such a great, most exalted personality. He worshipped by his act. The Krishna appeared himself in the form of Lord Nrsimhadev, right? So it's a beautiful pastime when how a devotee who was fully 5-year-old boy, you know, when I remember I was 5-year-old, I was just looking at walls, spacing out. I had there's no concept of closing my eyes and remembering Krishna. I was just spacing out, looking at walls. That's all I remember when I was doing it 5-year-old. Because there's no proper guidance, there's no understanding, you know. So that's how fallen we are in the age of Kali. From the very beginning, we're just spacing out, you know. I remember nothing else, just looking at walls all day, just, you know, nothing else. So this is the kind of ignorance we are in Kali Yuga. So spiritual realization, spiritual knowledge is very difficult to obtain. But Dhruva, who is a great devotee, you know, Prahlad, who is a great devotee of the Lord, he's from a very young age, he is trained, even though he wasn't trained. You see the example of Prahlad, he went to school with the demons. You know, all his friends, all his association were demoniac people. Because he grew up in a demoniac family. His teacher, his teacher was a great teacher of the demons. So he's learning knowledge from them. But he's still somehow becoming Krishna conscious. You see how crazy that is? Like imagine we go to school, we hear all about this nonsense philosophy or science and all these things, and at the end of the day we still become devotees of Krishna. How do you think that happened? That only happened because of the mercy of a pure devotee. Prabhupada, we heard the book or we read the book, we got a book from some book distributor, or we just attended some chanting program or something, then we were able to come to the platform to understand or appreciate Krishna consciousness. So by the mercy of a pure devotee, Prahlad, pure devotee when his Narada Muni's mercy was to his mother. So Prahlad became a pure devotee when he was in the womb. So Prahlad was such a great exalted soul. Why was he able to dedicate his life fully? Just take full shelter, full surrender. Sometimes we use this word very cheaply, right? The word surrender. It's quite a powerful word to use, surrender. What does surrender mean? Surrender means to give everything, give everything. Sometimes you say, I'm fully surrendered, Prabhu, I am fully surrendered to Krishna, but I don't want to give up my material attachments. That's not full surrender. Krishna says, a person who is still attached to the material opulences will never be able to take devotional service. What was the verse? Bhogeshwarya prashaktanam taya partha chetasha vyavasayatmika buddhi samadhana vidyate. In the mind of those who are fully attached to material opulence and sense enjoyment will never be able to perform devotional service. So it's a very powerful verse. Krishna himself is making clear. But our material attachment is so strong, it's like right to the bottom, down to the root. Because in Kali Yuga, everyone wants to enjoy. Everyone wants to be the enjoyer, the potent enjoyer. But we are not the potent, as Prabhupada is clearly mentioning. We are the potency. We are to be enjoyed, not to enjoy by Krishna. So this is the basic understanding of the philosophy that we should understand. And we shouldn't get bewildered. We shouldn't, there will be difficulties on the path of bhakti. Because we are coming from, as I said, we are coming from a very degraded mentality and a very degraded society. In the Vedic times, when you go outside your house, well, at least you were able to go outside your house. Thinking about the lockdown in current times, we not even go outside the house anymore. So what to speak, in the Vedic society, at least you were qualified. When you go outside, you'll see other people, who were also devotees of Krishna, or who were also, running around understanding the Vedic philosophy. They were not like all Shudras, just don't talk to me about Krishna, I don't want to hear about Krishna. Everyone was very happily eager to hear. Everyone was very amazingly influenced to hear about Krishna. That was the time that when we read Chaitanya Leela, when Lord Chaitanya would go outside, everyone would just try to get his darshan. I remember I was just reading a pastime where Lord Chaitanya, after he came back from his travels, came back to Jagannath Puri, and he was living in his small area where he has a small residence, and then thousands of people just came to see him. More than thousands of people came to see him, and it was said, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami writes that most of the people couldn't even see him because there were so many people and the area was so small. Not everyone could fit in the same position, but still everyone was gathered to see Lord Chaitanya. That was the excitement. That was the enjoyment for a devotee, to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So similarly, do we feel like that? That's the question we should ask ourselves. When we come to see Krishna, are we feeling that excitement? Are we feeling that enjoyment that, I'm going to see Krishna finally? It's been 12 hours since I have seen Krishna. It's been 8 hours since I have seen Krishna. Do we have that excitement? Most of the time, I don't feel that excitement yet. But hopefully, by practicing devotional service, I will be one day able to feel that excitement when we come to the temple to see Krishna. So, how do we develop this excitement, this awesome behavior in ourselves? How do we cultivate that mindset? Prabhupada says that the easiest way to become Krishna conscious is follow what I'm telling you. That's the simplest way. You follow the protocols, you follow your 16 rounds, chant your 16 rounds, follow your 4 regulated principles, attend the morning program, read Bhagavatam, read Bhagavad Gita, read the spiritual studies, and then you will become Krishna conscious. How easy is that? How easy is that? But no, sometimes it's very difficult as well. Sometimes even sitting in a Bhagavatam class, 40-minute Bhagavatam class may seem like a lifetime. May seem like, I have heard this before. Why is this constantly the same thing I'm hearing? So I don't know what comes to other people's mind, but that comes to my mind sometimes. I've heard this before. When is this going to end? So this is because of avidya. We are covered in ignorance. And slowly by slowly, we will be able to purify our consciousness. which is always there. So we are always conscious, we are conscious. When we are thinking like this, we are making a conscious thought. But this thought is still covered in ignorance, and that's what we need to purify, is the way we think. Because the way we think is the way we will act, right? If you think in the negative terms, then you will act negatively. If your thoughts are positive, you will act positively. Like for example, when I go on books, I tell people that mind is the index of the face, right? A face is the index of the mind. So whatever's on your mind will be able to be seen. People can see it. So we should understand it in a way that by purifying our thoughts, when we are constantly reading or hearing about Krishna, we are automatically becoming Krishna conscious. There are many stories in the Vedic philosophy where people who didn't even pay attention, but somehow or other they heard the Mahamantra subconsciously, or they heard anything about Krishna, they became devotees. They became elevated. So if that much can happen when you're subconsciously hearing about Krishna, imagine how much would happen. What difference would it be when you're consciously hearing about Krishna? So initially our consciousness, our mind does not want to focus on the good things, because we are not taught or raised in a way that we want to focus on the good things. We only want to focus on the part where we can enjoy or take a little mundane pleasure out of. That's what our mind and our senses want to focus on. But instead, if we try to focus on the spiritual, the highest source of pleasure, then automatically we will be able to become Krishna conscious. Because when we take shelter of Krishna Katha, when we take shelter of the name, of the holy name, our consciousness is not just our consciousness that is getting purified. It's people around us that will also get purified. See, this is like a very beautiful point that I was reading. It was somewhere in CC, I can't remember exactly where I read it, but it was saying, Lord Chaitanya's goal was to make a devotee, and that devotee will be able to make thousands and thousands of another devotee. Because this is when your consciousness is purified, that's only when people in your association will become purified. So this is the whole process of Krishna consciousness. When Prabhupada, how many devotees were there in the beginning? There were 5 or 6 or 10, maybe 20 devotees, the core devotees. And Prabhupada sent them choose a place around the globe and go preach, by themselves. And nobody even know how they were going to do it. Like I remember this beautiful pastime. Prabhupada was traveling through Mumbai to India or somewhere. They were passing through Delhi, and I think there was some of the senior devotees, the earlier disciples with them, Yamuna Mataji and some other disciples, and Prabhupada, and the train just stopped at Delhi. That wasn't the point. They were going to somewhere else, and the train stopped at Delhi, and Prabhupada just looked outside. There's a signboard that says Delhi, and Prabhupada told a few of his disciples, okay, get out and start a temple. And they're like, Prabhupada, that's not where we were going. That wasn't the original plan. And everyone's like bewildered and shocked. You look, what, start a temple? In a country, they don't speak the same language. In a country, they don't know anything about. Prabhupada told them to start a temple. And they did. That's the glories of a disciple. The instruction of the spiritual master is heart and soul of the disciple. If Prabhupada has said, go start a temple, we will go start a temple. There's we must be shocked and confused and bewildered. How are we going to do it? But we do it. We give it a try. Because result is not in our hand anyway. All we have to do is perform our duty. So when they went outside, when they left, they did not know what's going to happen. But Krishna, seeing that sincerity, that sincere desire of the disciples to serve his spiritual master, guided and provided with whatever they needed. And there were so many people that were coming to help that time. And now we go to Delhi, it's the biggest ISKCON temple ever in the whole India. You see such gloriously built, that temple. So all this hard work, this sincerity done by the disciples makes a person understand the value of worshipping or being surrendered to the spiritual master. Because I remember I heard this line that the glory of a leader is to see how well he has trained his student. And his happiness is in the success of his disciples. Prabhupada was happy to see his disciples give class. Prabhupada was very happy to see his disciples preach, So that was the success. That was the happiness of Prabhupada. So that's what we should learn, that we are representing Prabhupada. So we should make our behavior in such a way that Prabhupada would be proud of us. He would be like, look, he's doing such a good thing. Prabhupada would look at us and be very pleased in his mission that he started with a lot of austerities and a lot of struggle. We cannot imagine. Like I was speaking to someone the other day, that can we actually imagine being a 70-year-old scholarly Brahmana in Vrindavan, leaving Vrindavan to go to a place where he's never been before, leaving a beautiful situation just to follow the instruction of a spiritual matter? Can we imagine that? We can't even like come close to the idea of understanding how beautiful that is. So if Prabhupada has taken so much efforts to give us this beautiful concept, this beautiful philosophy, this beautiful way to become Krishna conscious, it's probably the easiest way to become Krishna conscious. I remember, if I compare myself today from 5 years ago when I wasn't Krishna conscious at all, I can say I've made a little advancement. Little by little I made progress in my spiritual life. So we should be very, very thankful, very grateful to our spiritual masters or our senior devotees in the movement who are helping us. As I said before, that devotees don't grow on trees. They have to be nourished. They have to be cultivated. They have to be helped sincerely and with a lot of hard work. That's why others can. But that will only happen when we have our own behavior sorted. If our own behavior is questionable, we're not going to help other people become Krishna conscious. Instead, we're just going to make a bigger mess. With our bad behavior, others will also see, okay, that's okay to do. So they'll start doing whatever which is not bona fide to do. So this is what we try to understand when we read Prabhupada's books, because Bhaktivedanta purports tell us everything that we need to know about becoming Krishna conscious. So we should take some time, we should spend little energy, to start our day, or maybe plan our day in a way that we are becoming Krishna conscious, or we are, taking association with the devotees. Some people were telling me that, I would really like to get more association of the devotees because I'm not feeling very spiritual. How can I do that? I said them, well, it's a crazy time, Everyone knows these times are crazy. It's hard to get the physical association with devotees. But Prabhupada has given us he's given us so many books, the way we can associate with him. And once you're associating with Prabhupada, that's the greatest association. So we should take some time in reading Prabhupada's books, because that's the real association we will get with Prabhupada. Because, Prabhupada, I used to hear that the disciples, Prabhupada's disciples, all the senior Vaishnavas would say, I never even got to see Prabhupada, personally. He was there and there was like thousands of devotees. I never even got a darshan with Prabhupada. But when I read the books of Prabhupada, I feel I'm connected. He's right here with me, teaching me, guiding me, helping me become Krishna conscious. So this is the realization. This is the vijnana of great devotees who are telling us. So when we read Prabhupada books, we can actually feel Prabhupada guiding us, telling us, informing us, telling us what not to do, telling us what to do. And many times Prabhupada is so straightforward, He'll say if you do this, or if you he'll say lines like, Maya is so strong, it's like a razor blade, just a little mistake and then you're gone. When you read that, you're like, whoa, the Prabhupada is like speaking to me directly. I can feel it, in my heart. So that's what we should do. We should try to read and try to associate with Prabhupada. So this is something I had thought I'll share today to discuss. I'll stop here if there's any questions, comments, corrections. We'll take them now. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you for that. When we say Krishna's Ishwar and we are little Ishwar.
Yeah, what?
Prabhupada says like Krishna Ishwar, but we are tiny Ishwar.
Yeah.
Yeah, Krishna has its own internal energy, external energy, and Mahana energy. Is that something that we can, that operation the tiny Ishwar also like the tiny Ishwar also has a manipulative of internal, external, and Mahana energy?
I'm not sure about that answer, but what I have heard is that we are in quality, we are similar to Krishna. We have every quality that Krishna has, but we have in minute quantity. Just like Prabhupada gives example of the sea, a drop of water from the sea has all the qualities of the sea, but that doesn't mean the drop of water is the sea. So we shouldn't think that because we have the qualities of Krishna, we are Krishna. We are not Krishna. Krishna is fully come. He's the potent, as Prabhupada is saying. We are the potency. So there's a difference between the potent and the potency. The sunlight is not the sun. It's part of the sun. Without the sun, there is no sunlight. So without Krishna, without Krishna's potency, without Krishna, there are no living entities. So that's why Krishna is there. He's the potent, and we are the potency. I don't know how exactly to answer that question. Maybe Prabhu can.
We are minute independence, but we are not full Purusha. We are still present in the command of Prakriti, which means we are the energy. We have only Prabhupada body. This is not what it is. But Prabhu said, potent means only Krishna. We come under the marginal section. What Prabhupada talks about minute independence is, the Jiva is trying to imitate Krishna, so it is taking a body to think and the Purusha. But because that is false, everything else is false also. Krishna is only Purusha. Unless somebody is potent, they can't have potency. And we are the potency, marginal potency. Which means we can't have potency in them. Sometimes analogy when it is actually said, like Prabhu said, there is an ocean, qualitatively they are same. We can't extend the analogy beyond the point of commonality. For example, when the ocean is actually compared to the drop, the only point of comparison there is the salty nature. That's it. Now if I talk about ocean has waves, is there wave here? No. Ocean has fish. Is there fish in the drop? No. So Prabhupada says whenever there is any analogy that's given, we should not extend the analogy beyond the point of commonality. Prabhupada what he means here is, when he says about like mind independence, falsely thinking that they are in this body, that little independence is there. First of all, potency is trying to become Purusha. That's wrong. But still, Prabhupada says some independence Krishna is given, because technically we is not even allowed to take this body. But Krishna is like, okay, you want to try? Okay, try. So in that sense, he says one independence.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. It's very nice. Anything else anyone wants to point out?
One comment, I think the point which you mentioned was very like the default position of a living entity is to be an impersonalist. Like even if we think about ourselves, right, it's not like we didn't know about Krishna. As you said, we have watched movies.
Yeah.
But until we came to that understanding, actually he's a person, we can have a relationship with him, we didn't take it too seriously at all. So, I like how you quote the Guru Maharaj, the default position is, everyone thinks they know, but actually consciousness is there. That's what is actually stopping them from doing it.
Yeah, and I was also just recently reading about this whole idea of impersonalism, because in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada really goes hard on impersonalists, and he just recently mentioned that there is no love, there's no emotion. Being an impersonalist, there's no emotion. You become like, as Mahaprabhu the other day was saying, you become like a stone. Your heart becomes like a stone. And when all these impersonalists were assembled, and Lord Chaitanya was present, the only reason for the devotee, to assemble all these impersonalists together so that they can see the personal, they can appreciate the personal beauty, the personal form of Lord Chaitanya. And once you see that personal form, it's hard to be an impersonalist, because once you appreciate that beauty of Krishna, like even Prakashananda Saraswati, he asked for forgiveness because he understood that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in a personal form. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was impersonalist before. but when he understood, when he heard the beautiful pastimes, it was Ramananda Roy or someone else, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So when he heard about the pastimes of the Lord, when he associated with Lord Chaitanya, he straight away knew. He is the personality of God because he has all the qualities. And the heart melts. We hear these beautiful explanations in Chaitanya Charitamrita how the hearts of the impersonalists just melts totally. And then they have nothing to do in life other than to worship Lord Chaitanya. So that's what Prabhupada says, that many times we hear Prabhupada say that being an impersonalist is very dangerous. Because then you just become very hardcore, you become very, there's no love even, because if you don't have love for Krishna, you will not have love for his creation as well. So if you really want to appreciate everything in the world, you appreciate Krishna, who is the source of everything. So there's a beautiful, interesting point I recently read. So, yeah, thank you for your kind attention. We'll stop here. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagat Guru Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi.